This is the complete beginner's guide to baking perfect sourdough. I've baked over 10,000 loaves, and in this video, I'm gonna walk you through a simple method made especially for beginners, one that makes the process easy and doable, not confusing and complicated, and by the end, you'll have a loaf so amazing, no one will believe you baked it yourself. First things first, we're gonna mix our flour and water. I've got 500 grams of unbleached bread flour. I do recommend if you're a beginner that you start with bread flour, and 350 grams of filtered water. And all we're gonna do right now is mix our water and our flour together. We are not adding our starter or our salt yet. And this is just gonna make a shaggy dough, and that's okay. So just give it a good mix. And what we're doing here is actually called the Autolyse. So we are giving the flour a chance to be hydrated with the water. Now this is an important step, especially for beginner bakers, because it's gonna really help you out later on by making the dough easier to handle. We're actually hydrating the flour and starting the gluten development. So you can see I've got my dough whisk here and we're getting started mixing this together, but I'm gonna switch to my hands now. And I mean, let's just face it, sourdough is a messy job, okay? So I'm gonna use my hands just to mix this flour and water, and it's gonna take a little bit of time, but that's okay. And then once I've got it fully mixed, I'm gonna cover my bowl and I'm gonna just let this rest for about 30 minutes. And then I'll come back and add my starter and my salt. So you can see it's starting to come together. Let's keep mixing it. I've got dough flying everywhere. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect at this stage because like I said, we're just combining the flour and water here, doing our Autolyse, getting the flour hydrated, starting a little bit of that gluten development before we add our salt and our starter. So it's definitely gonna look a little bit shaggy, and that is okay. All right, so maybe we can get in close here and you can see what this dough looks like. So definitely a shaggy and sticky dough, but that's okay. This is what it's supposed to look like, so don't worry. I'm gonna cover this up, let this rest for 30 minutes. I'm gonna go wash my hands, and then we'll come back and add our starter and our salt. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes, and now it's time to add our sourdough starter and salt. Now, I put my apron on because this part might get a little bit messy. And here is my salt, and I've got 100 grams of sourdough starter and 10 grams of salt. So I'm just gonna pour my starter right over the top of my dough. All right, and now I'm gonna take my salt and I'm gonna sprinkle that right over the top. Now this might be a little bit different than what you're used to doing. A lot of people will mix their flour, water, and starter together, then wait 30 minutes and add the salt. That's called a Fermentolyse, but for this we're doing an Autolyse. So we mixed our flour and water, and now we've added our starter and our salt. Now here is a little pro tip for you. This is just a bowl with some water in it, and what I'm gonna do is dip my hands in the water here, which will help the dough to not stick so much to them. Okay, now I'm gonna take my hand and I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna do a pinching motion to pinch this salt and starter into my dough. Now, it's not easy to mix the starter and the salt in. I mean, let's just be honest here. It's gonna take some work to get this mixed in, but you will get it mixed in, okay? So I'm doing a pinching and kind of a squeezing motion here. And then I'm just gonna get a little bit more aggressive with it. Now, it's okay to be aggressive with the dough at this stage. Once we add our starter to our dough, that's when it actually becomes sourdough, because this is when bulk fermentation begins, which is another thing that can be confusing to people. In sourdough, bulk fermentation starts when the sourdough starter is added to the dough, okay? A lot of people get confused with that and think that bulk fermentation begins once you're done with all your stretch and folds, but that's not the case. Another thing that's really important about this stage of the process is that you mix your dough very, very well. There are 3 things that make really good sourdough bread. The first one is having a really healthy and active sourdough starter. The second thing is fully developing your gluten, and that's what we're doing right now by doing this aggressive mix. We are really going to be developing the gluten in this dough. And the third key is understanding when bulk fermentation is done, which we're going to talk about when we get into the bulk fermentation part of this video, where I show you what my dough looks like when it is fully bulk fermented. So you can see now I've got my starter and my salt fully mixed in, but I'm going to keep mixing. Like, seriously, keep mixing. This is like a 5 to 7 minute process. I want you to mix so much you're out of breath like me and you're working up a sweat. And just trust me that this process is going to make your bread a lot better. It's also going to make your dough easier to work with later. So what I'm doing now is kind of like a slapping, cupping motion. I've got my hand in a cupping motion, and I am cupping the dough and slapping it along the side of the bowl. And that is really starting to develop the gluten and strengthen what we've already got going here. So just this mixing here, even though it's aggressive, is going to make a big difference in the final quality of our bread. So hopefully we can get in close here so you can see what this dough looks like at this stage. And I'm going to keep mixing for a few more minutes, and then I will show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so I am just about mixing this. It's been about 5 minutes, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired. This is a lot of work, but this is what you want your dough to look like at this stage. So we'll come in close here for you. And then I'm gonna use my dough scraper here and just scrape down the edges of my bowl. This just makes cleanup easier later. So my initial mix is done. I'm gonna cover my bowl again, let this sit for 30 minutes, and then we'll come back and start our stretch and folds. Okay, our dough's been resting for about 30 minutes, and now we're gonna start our stretch and folds. When it comes to sourdough, stretch and folds are kind of like kneading if you're making bread with commercial yeast, but it's just a more gentle form of kneading because sourdough needs to be babied. So let me show you how to do your stretch and folds. I'm gonna start by getting my hand wet. Now, we're gonna do 4 rounds of stretch and folds, and we will space them out every 30 minutes. I'm gonna show you what 1 round looks like. So this is called a stretch and fold because I'm gonna reach into the bowl. I'm gonna grab the dough down by the bottom, and I'm going to stretch it up and fold it into itself. And then I'm gonna turn my bowl a quarter turn and do the same exact thing. Reach down, stretch it up, and fold it into itself. Turn the bowl again, same thing. Now, when you're stretching your dough, you don't wanna stretch it so far that you start tearing it, okay? So if you feel it start to tear, then just stop, fold it into itself, and then move on to the next one, okay? So this is my 4th, stretch and fold. Now, this would be considered 1 round of stretch and folds. I will cover my bowl and let this sit for 30 minutes, and then I'll do that again until I've actually done this a total of 4 times. And what this is doing is, again, it's strengthening the gluten. Now, after I've done my stretch and fold, I like to just kind of organize my dough a little bit in the bowl by sort of just kind of folding it down a little bit, just like that, kind of folding it under itself. And if you noticed, I got my hands wet a few times because putting them in the water really helps to make the dough not stick so much to you. And of course, we do want to cover this. Again, you always want to cover your dough so that it doesn't dry out. And that is it for stretch and folds. Pretty easy to do. We're gonna do this until we've done 4 rounds, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, we're about to start our 4th and final round of stretch and folds, and I wanted to show you how this dough has transformed and what it's gonna look like on the 4th round of stretch and folds, which will be very different from what it looked like on the 1st round. So I'm gonna start by getting my hand wet. You can already see the dough looks different. I'm gonna reach in, it's nice and smooth, stretch it up and fold it over, stretch it up, fold it over, stretch it up, fold it over, and then 1 more turn. And this is my 4th and final round of stretch and folds. Now, each time that we do a round of stretch and folds, it strengthens the dough and builds gluten, and that's what gives you a really tall and airy loaf of sourdough instead of a flat pancake, or what we like to lovingly refer to as a UFO loaf. Now, we're done making pancakes and UFOs. We want tall, nice, light, airy loaves of sourdough, and these stretch and folds are gonna help get that for you. So let me show you what this dough looks like after 4 rounds of stretch and folds. Hopefully you guys can see that. We came in nice and close. It's nice and silky and smooth. This is a beautiful looking dough. Now I'm gonna transfer this into a different container. Now this is a clear container with straight sides. And the reason why I'm transferring my dough into this container is because throughout the next phase of bulk fermentation, I want to be able to see how much my dough has risen, and also if there are bubbles on the sides and the surface, and a clear container with straight sides is going to help me see that better. I will know how much the dough has risen. So I've got my dough in here. I'm gonna put the lid on, and then we're just gonna let this bulk ferment away. Now, I can't really tell you how long that's gonna take. It kind of depends on how strong and active your starter is, the type of flour that you used in your recipe, and how warm your dough is. All of those things can affect how long bulk fermentation takes. So instead, we're gonna watch for the signs that bulk fermentation is done, and that's gonna mean that we want our dough to almost double in size, to be light and airy, kind of like a giant marshmallow, really light and fluffy. It should pull away from the sides of the bowl without sticking too much. And when we give the bowl a good jiggle, the entire mass of dough should move, and I should see some bubbles on the sides and surface of the dough. So those are the things that I'm gonna look for so that I know bulk fermentation is done. I'm gonna guess with this dough, it's gonna take about 3 more hours, but I'll let you know when we're at that point. See you soon. Okay, our dough has been bulk fermenting, sitting on the counter covered, and I think the bulk fermentation is done now. So let me show you this dough. Our dough has doubled in size. It's nice and light and airy. You can see that the dough is kind of pulling away from the surface of the bowl. We've got some bubbles on the surface. We've got some bubbles all along the sides here, so you can see the dough's alive. We're gonna give this a good shake. The whole mass of dough is moving, and then let's pull this slightly away from the sides of the bowl. And you can see that this dough is ready to go. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this out of the bowl and we're gonna start pre-shaping it. We're gonna pre-shape and then we're gonna final shape. So I'm gonna get my dough scraper here. I'm gonna get this dough out of the bowl. And I'm just gonna put it right onto my work surface here. I've got my proofing basket, and we're gonna start with pre-shaping. Now, pre-shaping is just a way to kind of organize the dough into a round. We'll pre-shape, and then we will let it sit for about 15 minutes, and then we will come back and final shape it. So I'm getting my dough scraper ready. I've turned it over so I have the flat edge. My hand is a little bit wet so the dough doesn't stick, and I'm just gonna push the dough underneath itself. I have not floured my counter or gotten it wet or anything like that. Just pushing the dough underneath itself, and you're gonna see this kind of transform into a nice round ball of dough. Now I'm gonna take one hand here, and I'm gonna use this hand as a guide, and I'm gonna use my dough scraper to push the dough under and around in a circle. So I'm taking my dough scraper and pushing it under and around, and I'm using my other hand as a guide. And you can see we've got a nice round of dough right here. So if you come in on the top, you can kind of see we've already got some bubbles in here. This is from a nice bulk fermentation. It's nice and tight on the surface here. And I'm going to leave this uncovered for about 15 minutes. Now, by leaving it uncovered, the dough will form a slight skin so that when we come back to do our final shaping, I will flip this over and this portion will be non-stick and the dough won't stick to our counter. So let's leave this for 15 minutes and then I will be right back to do the final shaping. All right, our dough has been sitting uncovered for about 15 minutes and you can see it is not sticky at all. That's because we have formed a light skin on the top of the dough by having it exposed to the air. That's gonna make it so when we flip this dough over, it doesn't stick to our counter. So let's go ahead and do that and do our final shaping. I'm gonna flip my dough over, give it a little bit of a stretch, not much, and then I'm gonna shape this into a round. And the technical term for round is a boule. That's what this is called. If we were shaping it into an oval shaped loaf, that would be called a batard. But we're gonna do a round today, which is a boule. So I'm gonna put one hand in the center of the dough. I'm gonna get this finger just a little bit wet. And then I'm gonna take one corner of the dough, pull it into the center and pinch it up and in. I'm gonna go all the way around the dough, bringing it up and right into the center. Now I'm not pulling so hard that I'm tearing the dough, and then I'm going to flip it on over, and now I've got my boule, and I'm just gonna tighten this up a little bit. Now I'm using my left hand as a guide, and my right hand is gonna push the dough while my pinky pushes it under. So I'm going in a counterclockwise motion and pushing the dough under just to tighten it up and create a little bit of surface tension. Now, you wanna create a little bit of surface tension. That'll force the dough while it's in the oven to rise and spring up, and that is what we want. So you want a nice tight ball of dough, which we've got. There you go. And now I'm gonna take this dough and put it in my proofing basket, and then we will put this in the refrigerator. Now I'm putting it seam side up, and I'm just gonna pinch it together a little bit so you can see what it looks like in there. And then I'm gonna cover this, and I'm gonna put this in the refrigerator for the chilling step. Now this will go in the refrigerator for what we call the cold ferment or the chilling step, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to go in the refrigerator for about 12 to 18 hours. Now this is going to help develop flavor in the bread and continue breaking down the gluten, so it'll be a little bit easier to digest. This is what makes sourdough a little bit easier on your body, but it really develops flavor and also is a great way to work on timing. So if you want to have fresh bread for dinner tomorrow night, this would be a great way to do that. Make your dough today, put it in the refrigerator, and bake it before dinner tomorrow night. So it really helps you with your schedule and can help you to put sourdough on a schedule that works for you, so you're not, staring at the clock and staying up late at night to bake your bread. So I'm gonna put this in the fridge, and we will come back tomorrow and bake it. All right, our dough's been in the refrigerator for about 18 hours, and now we're gonna bake it. So I'm taking it straight from the refrigerator. You don't wanna let this warm up or come to room temperature. You actually wanna bake it right from the refrigerator. So I've got my dough here. I have my sheet of parchment paper. I'm gonna use this to load the dough into my hot Dutch oven. Now, my Dutch oven has been preheating in my oven at 450 degrees for about 45 minutes. So this thing is screaming hot. We're gonna be very careful. And one tip here, I'm gonna take my parchment paper and I'm gonna crumble it up. Watch this. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because when I put my dough on this parchment paper and put it in the Dutch oven, I don't wanna leave any weird creases all along the edges of the dough. And if you crinkle up your parchment paper like this, you'll see when I put it in the Dutch oven, it will form a better round around my dough, and there won't be all these weird creases on the bottom of my dough. So it's kind of one of those things you have to see. But here is my dough. I'm gonna put my crumpled up parchment paper right on top. I'm gonna flip it over, and there we go. And now we're gonna score this. We're using a very sharp blade here. This is called a bread lawn, and we're gonna do one long score. Now you need to score your sourdough bread because this gives an area for the steam to escape. There's water in this dough, and when it goes in a hot oven, it's going to steam. That's what's gonna cause the loaf to spring up, but that steam needs an area to escape, and by scoring the dough, we're giving it a designated spot to escape. Otherwise, our dough would tear, and it wouldn't look that great. So we wanna do one score. Now we're gonna do an expansion score. I'm gonna hold my really sharp blade at an angle, and I'm gonna score the bread from the top of the surface to the bottom, going a little bit less than a ½ inch deep. Now, the trick with this is just to be confident and to go in there and score quick and confident. So here we go. There we go. That is my expansion score from the top to the bottom of the loaf. Now you want to immediately load this into your hot Dutch oven. Be careful because that Dutch oven is really hot. So here we go, I'm gonna load it in. And you can see, because I crinkled up my parchment paper, that hopefully we don't get any weird creases inside our bread. Now I'm gonna put the lid on this, and then I'm gonna bake this at 450 degrees Fahrenheit in my preheated oven. So I'm gonna bake it at 450 degrees for 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna take the lid off and I'm gonna bake it for another 20 minutes. So it'll be about a total of 40 minutes of bake time. You wanna bake until the internal temperature is 205 to 210 degrees Fahrenheit. So in my oven, that takes 20 minutes with the lid on the Dutch oven. Then I will take this lid off and continue baking for about another 20 minutes. All right, I will see you back here when this loaf is baked. All right, our bread has been baking for about 40 minutes, and it is time to take it out. This is the best part. All right, here we go. We have a beautiful loaf of sourdough bread. It's gonna be delicious. Your family is gonna absolutely love it. Did you know that you are supposed to let your bread rest for about an hour before you slice into it? If you don't, the interior can get a little bit gummy. So the bread is actually still baking while it sits here, so it is important to let it sit. But you know what? I won't tell anyone if you cut into it early, because warm bread slathered in butter, it's one of life's simple pleasures, and I don't think you should miss out on it. Who knew a little flour, water, and salt could turn you into the star baker of the neighborhood? Now, there's a few more advanced strategies that I've started doing recently that have really been getting me absolutely stunning loaves. If you're ready for that, watch this video here where I show you what they are, how they work, and how you can use them to make the best sourdough in your neighborhood.